Huh?
You sit here and be on camera, so.
Oh, man, I don't want to be on camera.
All right. Well, let's see which camera we're gonna use. I'm Greg Harmon. I know most of y'all in here, but some of y'all. And I work with the State Sierra Club. And been in San Antonio about 10 years. It's been about 10 years, I guess, that I first met Juan. You're over here at the Whitty, giving them grief over their bundle burials and everything that they've got back in collections, and you gave me some education on some of the issues that are happening around that kind of work. And Frankie, just a few years since really Dakota Access and Standing Rock, we first kind of hooked up and saw what you guys are doing up there. And when I saw you both you got into my Facebook feed, with all the selfies and the videos from San Francisco, and I thought, I needed to talk with y'all when you came back. And this was the Global Climate Action Summit that they just held, and it was significant. A lot of people were watching it, I think, because a year ago, June 1, Trump got out of the Paris Agreement, and so we're now the only country on the planet that is not committed, has not at least verbally committed to working together to try to solve our global climate crisis together. And a lot of people in San Antonio got up, and I saw you guys as well, got up and got our new mayor from day one, so, was kind of, all right, declared we're gonna sign on with the Paris Agreement, and then we've got we've got a climate action plan that we're developing so that we can stop polluting the planet with our greenhouse gases, as well as help protect the people in San Antonio and the surrounding area from the acceleration of extreme weather that pollution is causing. And like I said, we've been engaged individually and collectively in a lot of these fights, and so I wanted to talk about San Francisco. It was encouraging on the one hand because the U.S. had bowed out, and the planet began to think about, the people around the planet began to think about, if the nation states, if the United States is not going to lead and the nations are failing us, they're not setting goals, they're not setting a framework that will help us get through this kind of like this bottleneck, this crisis, then we have to do it from a local level. And I think what I heard from y'all and from others in San Francisco was that local might mean something different to different people, right? And there was a critique, and Frankie and I, we spoke briefly about it. There was a critique that there was just a huge business presence, and I think that speaks to where we are, right? We've turned over our governments to big business, and so it's inevitable that that's banked up inside of the climate work. So, and I want to talk about that, but I'm mainly interested. I'd like to share more stories about y'all and how you got into some of the work and some of these you've been engaged with, whether it's the LNG one and the pipelines. How you doing, sir? Or it's the Louisiana or West Texas and some of the DAPL work, Ricky. Sign-in. Oh yeah, we got a sign-in going around, so good catch. But maybe Juan, maybe you can start us off and maybe talk about where in your mind, in the cosmology of Carrizo tribe, that this extraction, like the oil and gas struggles, fit, and where you began your work
Well, it started when they first started with Reagan, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It was back in the 80s, early 80s, when he was wanting to open the Keystone. First it was Alaska, and it was all the Alaskan Native people that were asking for help, and I was like listening to all this, and I was trying to speak to everyone, but there wasn't that much interest in it yet at the same time. But we had a lot of problems going on here because we struggled with the nuclear or the toxic waste dump that was closed up in West Texas. We fought that for the longest time, and We fought things like the,
Was that the Sierra Blanca?
yeah,
The Sierra Blanca
Yeah.
fight? Okay.
yeah,
Alright.
so.
That was just for the room. Sierra Blanca was targeted for a low-level radioactive waste dump that they would have taken Maine and Vermont, right? Power plant waste, shipped it across the country, and put it in this poor little town way out in the corner of the state.
Yeah.
So yeah, good.
And so we were, you know, really trying to, you know, maintain that tribal identity and trying to, because we know that there's burial sites in that area, and especially in the Monahans area, you know, what they call the sand hills.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole area was just one of those things that we continued to fight for a long time. Tried to avert a lot of the stuff with the some of the oil wells that they were bringing into, you know, like Hockley County, Little End, and all that area. So it's been a while trying to do this. We got into protecting even the prairie dogs, you know, up in Lubbock, because they were trying to bring in. They were talking about putting a strip mall in the middle of what is Buffalo Springs Lake right now, and we were able to work with the Sierra Club with them on trying to avoid that. But, I mean, we were even. I mean, it was that one got kind of hairy because of it was actually, they were trying to run oil through there too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just trying to do the research. So we've been involved you know, for a long time in
Right.
trying to protect sacred sites and sacred ground.
Well, that's, I think, what I get from talking with you that is so rich is your knowledge. When you talk about a pipeline, or you talk about the prairie dog village or something, you know, you're talking about places that have a history, that kind of settler state, you know, the history that a lot of people in the state don't have. You know, they have a burial site in Monaghan. That's not why a traditional environmental organization may jump into a scrap, right?
Well, but we were getting pictures of remains that were being, you know, the dust storms that happen in the Panhandle around Odessa, and there's this. I mean, if you've ever been in that area, you'll know what the dust storms are. They're bad, especially around spring. They're really bad. You can't even be outside that long because it just. I mean, it causes teregions in your eyes because of the sand that's out there so badly. It's just, it blows. It'll blow an engine. Just driving from Lubbock to Odessa, people have driven their cars into the ground because of the sand being sucked into their engines. So I mean, that would uncover a lot of burial grounds in that area. And of course, because of the lack of you know,
Topsoil?
Well, conservation methods of trying to maintain, you know, the topsoil. And so it really created a lot of problems with that. So we've been fighting stuff like that for a while. So the quality of air, I mean, that I've grown up with is, since I remember being 5 years old, you know, it's been the Dust Bowl kind of mentality. If you never, and you've never been in that kind of a environment, you should go up there around spring, so about April or May.
Yeah.
And then you get those 70-mile-per-hour winds coming off the Rockies there, coming right straight through there. So sometimes we'd say Odessa's just flying by, Clovis is flying by. But, because I mean, it was.
Because it literally was flying.
Yeah, it was flying by. And that's where they wanted to set these. Now they're doing the same thing. They want to put another nuclear toxic waste in Yoakum County, which is right at the edge of the state line of Texas and New Mexico. And so now we're going to have to take that fight on too, to try and get as much involved in it. But we've been able to recognize that there's a case called the Windman Wind 2 versus the Interior Department. And we're using that case to be able to avert the expansion of the Dos Republicas mine in Eagle Pass. We've already submitted the letter to them, and even looking to take legal action if they don't come up with the remains that they so. Nobody knows where they are.
Yeah.
And that's the excuse that all of them are saying now. We don't know. You know, they're saying, yeah, we got the 106A, but I don't know where they are.
No,
Whitty's saying the same thing, so
Right.
people like that.
right.
And they're saying, we don't have them. And unless you can get a warrant to go look into that place, you're never going to find them. But with the whole, I mean, it's all connected here in Texas because they really don't recognize the presence of.
That's what I was wondering, if we can work our way through in this conversation
Yeah.
about federal recognition for tribes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the thing is that NACRA has changed to where a non-recognized tribe can ask for help, or they can ask for help from a recognized tribe to be able to do that.
But I want to hold on to that thought. I want to work our way around to that, and I want to bring Frankie in. I guess we can just start with Dapple. When did kind of some of these struggles? Because when I think about like the history, like Juan's talking about, and my own, like I lived in West Texas in the '90s, and there was an awareness. Even though we knew like global warming, climate change were a topic, it wasn't like top of mind for a lot of people. We were still talking about the strip mine was the strip mine, and the coal plant was the coal plant, and this big. I feel like this big awareness that how all these things are connected in terms of, what we're burning here is burning someone else, across the planet. And I feel like Standing Rock was, if people hadn't caught it by then, that really that caught a fire for a lot of people. And I wonder if you can maybe bring us, up with how you got involved there, and just the awareness of these intersecting crises, right?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I wasn't as much involved back in the early 2000s with the politics. It was mainly just helping elders in ceremonies down in California, where I'm originally from, where I was raised, and mostly it was for sacred sites and burial sites, village sites, things like that. I didn't really get involved in the politic aspects of it. So I moved here in 2005, and it wasn't too much longer after that. I met Juan and a few other people, and we got involved in some politics, and it just got to the point where it was like enough was enough. It's just like it just it's not looking very promising for the future for our next generation. And I have kids, I have children, and I think about them and their future, and how what our actions are going to do for them, how it's going to affect them. What do they have to look forward to? And I felt at the time that it was kind of a situation where, like, if I was my child, I'd be looking at what's going on in this world and saying I'm kind of dreading, our future, rather than, having something to look forward to, something to, to have as an encouragement to continue to walk forward, and rather than be discouraged because of everything that's happening, and all the contamination and pollution and everything that's happening. And so I struggled a little bit with the whole politics and stuff like that. But one of my elders told me that what was politics, as far as environmentalism or activism, he said those things have been a part of our spirituality and our way of life way before those words were even invented. To take care of this earth, to take care of our future generations. Leave a place better than the way you found it. It was part of our teachings. And so he kind of explained that activism, the end result, if you remove the ego and self-interest and all those other things, the look at me's kind of mentality, the end result is that you're struggling and striving and fighting for a better future for that next generation, right? And what is our spirituality? To fight, not to fight, to build a relationship with the spirit world and the creator ourselves, to help better ourselves, our families, our communities, and our future generations. So I got involved, started to get involved with AIM, the American Indian Movement, and other groups that were fighting for all these different causes. And I think the first thing I really got involved in here as far as politics was that
Equal. The Indian Child Welfare Act with Veronica.
Yes. So we got involved. We started off with that.
Just describe that.
It's the Indian Child Welfare Act, and they were challenging it with the baby Veronica baby, the Cherokee. They took away from the family and gave it to the white family.
So it kind of just trickled from there, and then it just turned into a situation where it's like, okay, we went up to South Dakota for some ceremony. We came back, and it just, we heard about the youth running all the way up to DC, and to fight this pipeline Energy Transfer Partners was putting into the ground. And when we heard the stories about, I think it was supposed to originally go through Bismarck, right? Bismarck?
It was good.
It was originally going to go through Bismarck, which was predominantly a white community, right? And then they said, no, we don't want that, in our community because we don't want the potential contamination. So then they said, well, let's put it, by the people that we feel, will give less resistance, right? Which is the reservation and indigenous people that live in the area, the Sioux Nation. And so when we heard about that, it blew up from there, and people started really resonating towards the whole saving our water is life, everything that we are about is about water. And it's one thing that we could all relate to, no matter what faith, what background, what religion, what spirituality, whatever it is, wherever you come from, the one thing we could all relate to is that we all need that water, we all need that sacred, water of life. So that's when you saw, and that's why I always say that, I think the most powerful teaching that came out of Standing Rock, for myself anyway, is, that power and unity. You had so many people come together and everything that was created that can never be taken away, which is that awareness. No matter what happens, that power and unity that created the awareness throughout this whole world, people from all over in different places of the world to be a part of this and stand side by side, and that can never be taken away. And it created more movements, other smaller movements within other communities, and more activism or environmentalism or whatever you want to call it. Basically getting people to stand up to fight for a better future.
Well,
for our
that's
children.
something that, and I'll piggyback on that. Two things. One is when you talk about our children, we talk about future generations. The thing, I think must have read this after coming back from North Dakota or South Dakota, North Dakota, was that the root or the ignition for Standing Rock, was young people.
Yep.
And it was young people on the res that were essentially, sick and tired. They're 13-year-olds. They've got alcoholic, brothers or sisters or friends that are dying or drug addicted or all this stuff. So this is just basic social problems and the outflow of colonialism and this kind of just fact of life stuff. I mean, it's not like a plan, and it was returning to using traditional, like going back to old ways and getting that kind of got the elders, got their parents, and got other folks to engage. And so
I think it got much of the community involved.
Yeah.
Whether they're young or old. But I think what it was like a reminder for me personally. I think it was a reminder of that historical trauma, right? That systematic trauma. Right. That even with this climate justice, global, climate justice summit, it's a reminder of that historical trauma and that systematic trauma that continues to happen. So it's not really historical trauma because that when it's historical trauma, it's what happened in the past, right? But it's still happening. So it's not really historical trauma because it's still happening. It's trauma. Just straight up just trauma because it's still happening today. It just has a different face, a different look, different word, different approach, but it's still happening. And it's always happening, and it starts off happening to the communities that they feel they're going to get the less resistance from. And it's wrong. I mean, I think the more that people are aware of those things, because it's so easy for us to be blinded or to ignore, because it's more convenient to not, address it or want to see it, like turning off and clicking off the TV when they see something that's happening in another country or right down the street from them, from where they live. We don't want to see it, so let me make my life a little more convenient. Just switch the switch and change the channel. Well, we can't do that. We can't afford to do that because by the time our kids decide to do it for themselves, it might be too late. It might be too late now, but we can't stop trying. We can't give up. We have to keep fighting. So our kids can have a healthy future, a sustainable future, and we live in a time where it is possible. It's just, this world is predominantly run by corporations. They decide and dictate what our societies and our people become dependent on. And we need to change that. We need to force them to change that mindset.
Go
But I think that it goes even further than that, because along with the pollution of the environment, there's a pollution of forgetting how to be human, and you can't understand that when you are colonized and you support a system that continues to do that, because and that's part of the pollution, for us, for ourselves too, is that, we find the anesthesias that make us numb to the situations that are happening out there. And like money's an anesthesia, drugs and alcohol is an anesthesia, religion's an anesthesia, individualism is the education. Even getting a college education, because it's a white man's education, and it's not around who we are anymore. Being raised in these ways.
Checking in at the senior center.
Being raised in these ways is understanding that, how do I continue to be this human being? Because that's how we used to call ourselves. Is taking away everything that's been laid on top of us, even the federal recognition stuff. That's part of colonization. Tribal councils is part of colonization, because that didn't come in until 1934 with the Howard Wheeler Act. So when we talk about lifeways, the lifeways should be the ones that almost mandate that we be part of everything that is. All the other stuff and the way we speak, we don't speak in our language, because in our language there is that spiritual ideal, there is that emotional ideal, there is that connection that connects us as a total social being, and not just the spiritual being or the emotional being. All five of the beings that make us a holistic human being connected to what's going on. Right now we're just spirits learning to be human beings, because they've taken that away from us. Our tribal identities have been polluted.
Well,
and it's been polluted because of genericism. Individualism is one of the biggest things that occurs out there. And genericism it doesn't give you really an idea of what is there. The fight at Dapple was because it was on sacred sites, and it was hurting sacred sites. And they know sacred sites there, and we should know sacred sites in Texas too, because everything that we were at, there was a village there at one time. There are BRNs, which are burnt rock medians, all along, every river. Not just the one in San Antonio, not just the Rio Grande, but all of these rivers are sacred to us, because we used to ford them. We used to live close to water. There's over 17,000 springs in Texas, not just one that's sacred. They're all sacred. And to sit there and say, well, we got to take care of this one. By taking care of that one, we have to be open to understanding what's going on out there. Because one of the things that makes us understand that is that when they're building a wall and they're waiving 30 laws to be able to build that wall.
All these federal laws.
That means that they can do whatever the hell they want, and it's not going to affect them, because it's their laws. It's not law. The laws aren't made to protect us as Native people or as citizens of Texas or the United States. It's to protect the corporations, because they're the ones that have the money, and they're not paying the taxes. They're getting tax abatements. Two of the LNGs got tax abatements in Brownsville.
Oh, I like what you're saying about, we were talking about San Francisco. Maybe we can turn into that in a minute, but this idea about learning to be human, spirits learning to be human, and as you describe the relationship with place, right, where you know where your sacred sites are, is that so? So in California, when you come up against corporations who are using a very particular paradigm, corporate response of profit, right, profit motive to speak to climate change, is that even possible way forward, when it sounds like the root of this is a settler mindset that doesn't know sacred land and know how to be in relation? Was that part of the protest and what local means?
Well, I think what's happening there with Jerry Brown is that he wants all these oil fields because there's going to be money, and it trickles. It affects the deficit of the state, so it makes it less. But at the same time, you've got two parties. One of them is all about the money. The other one's all about, reducing and creating jobs. So you're caught in the middle between these two parties that really don't understand the reality of what they're doing to the future generations and to us now. Because, if you get one of those heat sensor cameras,
Mm-hmm.
and you put them on any of these things, any of these fracking fields,
Oh, yeah.
and you can see,
Yeah.
you can see
Yeah.
where they're all leaking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where they're all leaking,
Oh.
and that's the problem,
Mhm.
is because it's still happening, and it's like, yes, it happened. We have trauma from historically, but it's happening right now, and we're not even aware of it.
Mhm.
You know, once we find out about it, then we have to recognize the fact that there is an ethnic cleansing that goes along with everything that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe.
but let me tell you about
Yeah.
because the title of the summit was the anti-summit.
Okay. So this is the one that's outside,
Yeah,
the one in
that's
the
outside,
street.
yeah.
Okay.
It was called Soul to Soul, which was
Right.
the first three letters of solutions and solidarity. So it was solutions to solidarity, and I think that that's part of what we're trying to work towards, solidarity. But it's not based, you know, on pan-Indian ideals. It's based on, you know, the ideals of the people of the land, because the Ohlone were the people that were prominent there.
Mhm.
And the way they spoke and how Corina spoke
Mhm.
was talking about, you know, maintaining that.
Tell me that back. I didn't catch the. It was based not on a pan-Indigenous.
But on the tribal presence of the people
Of that place.
Of that place.
And what's the?
They were the Ohlonians.
Ohlonians?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're trying just to maintain some kind of cohesiveness, because they've been so tragically divided
Mhm.
because of the colonization that occurred. So they're even them are struggling to maintain, but it seemed like it brought them together,
Mhm.
at least to a place where they can start
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
I mean, they're speaking the same language, singing some of the same songs,
Mhm.
and the thing is, it's just, you know, finding a way to go back and reclaiming everything. Like it happened down in Southern California with the Korea and the Hussein and all those people, the Hashim,
Right.
and
What was it? I mean, just to go back to Stanner, because that was all the council fires for the first time. And, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that it can happen, but really, I think a lot of that, what he's saying is that, you know, that the whole soul to soul, you know, that their message was, you know, it's the communities themselves that have some solutions, which is don't put band-aids on it. The corporate, you know, fix is band-aids. You know, how do we, you know, not only band-aids, but how can we profit on giving a better environment or cleaning up the environment for you, rather than just stopping the very thing that's causing the problem in the first place, right? Like stop the fracking, stop the extractions, and move towards renewable. Add those to the portfolio.
tell them about the
But-
warehouse,
But which one?
Greenpeace,
Greenpeace one?
and all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
You should have here.
yeah, we definitely need a warehouse like that. I mean, they're very planned out for, like, they have everything categorized, warehouses, you know, water, air vents, you know, land, you know, yeah. So, you know, they have a lot of solutions to, like, how to address the issues.
Yeah.
The thing was, is that their message was, how do you create, you know, it's about creating a sustainable future. And that the communities themselves have the answers, not corporations that don't spend time in those communities where they're having those climate issues, you know, that contamination, you know, they don't live there, they don't go and spend time there, they're not listening to the people, they're coming up with their own solutions, and their solutions involve them getting paid. Because what they care about is the bottom line, the money that they're gonna make, making their investors and their shareholders happy, rather than what's in the best interest of the people themselves. Or how do you stop, instead of creating band-aids, how do we just stop the problem all around? You know what I mean? It's like, instead of trying to create fake environments or false environments that, you know, clouds or whatever they want to do, you know, to try to solve the problem.
Iron in the ocean.
Right, yeah, you know, that's not going to be for free. They're not going to do it for free. It's about money.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the thing, is that just the communication, the message was, again, like I said, you know, we want a sustainable future. I think all communities want a sustainable future, and, you know, and we need to start listening to those communities, because they have the answers, because they live there every day, day and night. You know?
And that's what happened with the Dos Republicas mine, because of this expansion. They didn't consult. There was no consultation with any of the tribes. And I mean, yes, they sent a letter saying we're going to do this, but they didn't consult to what they did with the what do you call it, the remains that they found, or the artifacts. So nobody knows where they are. So now that's the reason they might not be able to if we continue to just keep putting the pressure on them, that we can stop that. Now the other mine over here on 37 is also,
Is that is that frac sand? What is the?
it's the San Miguel.
Oh, okay.
San Miguel
Okay.
mine right off 37.
Yeah.
They're in a battle with pipeline coming in.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, we should take.
Let them go.
But the thing is too, like, like what one's saying though, is like a lot of those things that we've seen over and over and over again is like policies and changing policy. It's a tool, but as quick as a policy is approved or disapproved, it can be switched back in a blink of an eye. So we've seen it. We've seen it in Standing Rock. Yeah. We see it happening now in Louisiana. And our relatives over at Louis LaVie camp in Louisiana. And here you got corporations that are doing what they're doing to the land, and they're being told that it's illegal what they're doing, but they do it anyway because they got the money to pay the fines. They got the money to say, you know what, we don't care what the law says. We're above the law, right? We're above the law, because we can afford to break the law, right? And so that's an ongoing process. So for me personally, from what I've seen in my experience, policies, again, like I said, it's a tactic, it's a tool. But in real life, the way that you stop something is, when it comes to these corporations doing what they're doing, is you have to affect the bottom line. You have to affect the money.
Okay.
You have to affect the money. If you can somehow find a way to affect the money and continue to keep affecting the money and create more awareness, so that way that can build more and you can do more divestments, and not just in banks but in other aspects that relate to our everyday life. I always say, it's like, as an environmentalist, it's kind of like an AA group. It's like, yes, I'm an environmentalist, but I am hypocritical and contradicting to some degree, because I contribute to that very system, right? But by doing that, I'm first acknowledging that I'm part of the problem, which means now I might think a little more clearly and be more wise about recycling more, leaving a smaller footprint, right? Not driving as much. Right? Yeah, we're a part of it. Right. We are a part of it in little bits. Little bits, and it's hard, but we have to realize that we all contribute to it.
Well, let me pivot on that. I think we haven't hit direct on something I think is important. If policy can be overturned and flipped, with a switch. I mean, I just want to talk about, so San Antonio right now with our climate plan, we just got, good word from the mayor that they want to go for a more aggressive climate plan to go to zero greenhouse pollution by 2050, like a 90% or 100% reduction by 2050. Great news, but we're also on the cusp of a potential proposition election, which would allow the city to, like the same way like the Tea Party shut down the light rail in the city. They said we don't want to pay for people in the city to be, light rail back and forth to work or whatever, so they shut it down. But it seems to me like we haven't hit on is the solution being social transformation, right? If you want something to stick, you need the people broadly to change and have this kind, you know what I'm saying? And so what role do you think then is an awareness, or you go for a while, so just, where I'm going.
I think the buzzword right now is called just transition. And to understand what is just, and when we look at looking for solutions, like I went to France, talked to P&B Paribas. They pulled out of all fossil fuels, pulled out of LNG.
And this is on the coast of Texas, proposed LNG plants. You went to the potential funders.
All three of them. Now we're still fighting Societe Generale, and it looks like they're going to be pulling out of the other LNG. Right. So those are the things that we look at as trying to make them divest and not put money into it. But when you got the community in South Texas that doesn't understand very much other than they need a job, and how do we make that just transition? So we have to look for ways to be able to do that in South Texas. How can we do that? One way we can do it is start educating the people there and letting them know what the real problem is, and let them see the evidence of what's really happening, because I don't think they're aware of all the leaks and all the explosions that are happening, like 2-3 a month now. and with Keystone and
So the threat to their own livelihood or to their health.
to their
You
health.
describe.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I can get pretty bad about it. And I can tell them, yeah, they're going to create jobs. They're just going to bring in more oncologists in for all the cancer you guys are going to get. So you're going to have a lot of jobs created by those guys for cancer reasons. Okay, go ahead.
It's a right now.
Yeah.
How y'all doing? Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good.
When Standing Rock was happening, here in San Antonio, we had weekly protests at Energy Transfer Partners up here. And I think that was part of the solution. In other words, when you do national pressure, you show national effort. And that was part of what helped. I would think in terms of starting those up again with Bayou Bridge in Louisiana. It's the same characters, right? It's the same teams,
Same company.
right? So
We are.
if that was part of what worked then, maybe we can do that again.
Yeah, I think so. There is plans this next coming month for an action to be done at Indigenous Transfer Partners during a shareholders meeting. That it's actually
Give us the plug of the date.
it's October 18th.
Okay.
It's going to be we'll be putting up an event page. There's many people from Louisiana and
Good.
South Dakota, all different frontline communities are going to come to be a part of it. We're going to try to speak at the shareholders meeting. There'll be rallies inside as well as outside. So yeah, that is part of like the strategy. Is always, like you said, it's about creating awareness, right? And that's what I was gonna say. Like what Juan was talking about, the education. To me, like education and awareness. I remember going to a town after we had Two Rivers Camp on West Texas. We're like looking into moving this camp to another front line, and we went to a community where the fossil fuel industry already went into that community, right, and did what they had to do, gave jobs and contaminated the water, and then they left, right. And their water is contaminated. It's not really that safe to drink right out of the faucet. And so we talked about having this camp, there, and it was the majority of the community was like, no, they didn't want us there, even though they can't drink the water. Even though they can't drink the water, they don't want us there. And it was because many of them want the oil industry to come back because of what they've already created and left behind. They want their sons and daughters to have jobs. It comes down to that money and that education. Like, how do you re-educate them and saying, you know what, we don't need that kind of, those kinds of jobs in our community. Why don't we have more, wind turbine technology or solar panels, solar farms, or, biodegradable products being grown, maybe even hemp to replace textiles and other energy costs that were along with everything else.
And that was what we were proposing with that camp there. I mean, the mentality's still out there. It's just a matter of trying to get the land.
It's a reprogramming. You almost have to deprogram so you can start to kind of reprogram yourself of a new way of thinking, right? And it's not easy.
That's what I was trying to get at, what you described right there, because Juan, you were saying education is about the threat to an individual's health or to a family's health, but we're talking about something else. You go into a community that's already been threatened, they've already had their water poisoned, but they have a very particular quality of life or a life way that kind of at this deeper level has to be changed, right? So I mean, I want to open it up to the room.
Let me just say one thing.
Yeah.
Because the same weekend that they're going over there, we're going to end up having to be at the National Butterfly Center because that's where they're passing the wall through, and we're going to set up there, and we're going to make it.
Where is it?
It's in Mission, Texas.
In Mission.
18.
Is it on the 18th too?
You're both on the 18th.
I just opened my calendar.
But the thing,
It's not the 18th, is it?
it's the 18th and 19th. Yeah, it's a weekend. But the only reason I'm saying that is because we have issues in Texas we got to take care of.
Yeah.
And we have other organizations and other corporations that are also doing a lot of damage while the things with the pipeline is going on. I mean, right now he just showed me pictures of what's happening in Del Rio because they're putting a pipeline in already. And we got to find ways to get up there and do something. And we're talking about Kinder Morgan. We're talking about Enbridge. We're talking about ETP at the same time also.
So it's
Black Mountain.
It's the
The
19th.
19th,
Yeah, it's a day after.
Okay. And, oh, you're doing Friday?
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because you share those meetings.
So those are the things that we're looking at. And we have a slogan, if you build a village, you save the earth. Because we were people that lived in villages. We didn't stay in the villages for more than a week or 7 days. And basically we did that because we didn't want to, totally mess up the whole area. We just moved to another place. And then that one would grow back up. We were pretty good conservationists. Now, I don't know if I'm an environmentalist, but I am, Eshtokna. And it concerns to me because those are the connections that I have. And that's why we need to be down there in South Texas as well.
And the thing I think we have to remember too is like a lot of these corporations, especially the fossil fuel industry, a lot of their executives are here in Texas. We a lot of it's shipped off this Gulf, out of Texas. So, and there's a lot, like Juan said, there's a lot that's happening here that a lot of these companies throughout the United States and throughout this world are based out of Texas, out of Dallas and
like North American, who is a subsidiary of those Republicas, is right down the road from ETP also.
Well, I should ask what's Kelsey Warren up to these days?
Well, they're talking about a new pipeline.
Been to see him? Like,
They're talking about a new pipeline, and they're having that shareholders meeting that we plan on visiting and sharing our thoughts.
mm-hmm.
But
So
we went
that's-
down to Louisiana, and
right.
what they're dealing with and what they're going through is like I said, they are on land that they're allowed to be on.
Yeah, they bought the land.
And
that's what we need.
and ETP
Have it.
doesn't have the right to be there, but they're the ones still getting arrested. And so they're breaking the law. And these people who are there, these relatives that are there at the camp, at Louis, they are actually trying to uphold the law, but they're the ones still getting arrested. So that just shows you that ETP doesn't care. Those corporations don't care about what the law says, because they'll buy their way out of it. They feel they're above the law, and that's the message right now: is that those corporations should not be above the law. They should have to abide by what the community feels is right for their community. They need to be heard because they live there. These people don't live there. They come there, they visit, or come and do the damage they're going to do, or do what they have to do to help that 1% of people that benefit from it. Because it ain't the local community.
So let me ask you last question, and then just see where we're at in the room if we want to continue to open the conversation. But so you go into a community. Let's say you're out in the Permian somewhere, right? It's going just gangbusters right now with fracking, and everybody's running for the jobs, or they get their water contaminated, and they're still running for the jobs. I know, Juan, you mentioned public health as one of the issues. How do you talk to people about what another world looks like, right? The world that people are talking about at this outside the San Francisco climate gathering. How do you paint that for people here in Texas or in the oil patch?
Well, I think that in the long run, we have to recognize the fact that everything's going to end up here, and for me, there are prophecies that we have that are painted on the walls in Del Rio, all the way up to adobe walls. And they all talk about things that were happening, things that had happened, things that will happen. And they're all there. I mean, whether, people want to put their ability to look at it as, it's one person's interpretation, the prophecy's there. We're talking about horizontal fracking being shown. And it's there for people to see it. It's not something that's 4,000 years old. And it was done at a time when people saw that there was a problem that was going to occur here. Because, especially on this continent, was, the Spaniards were the first Europeans that landed here. And those rivers are shown right along there on all of those things. And it shows us that there is a healing. There's a healing. It even shows a snake on there, and but it shows that there's a healing, and it's a return back to being human beings again. And for us, being a human being was going back to our dances, going back to singing our songs. Going back to the balance of man and woman. That there's always that balance within the tribal communities. And there should be. And for me, it's important to recognize that if we're going to find healing from this mentality out there, is that we open the eyes of the people that don't want to see. You know? Because they can see, they're just kind of caught with it.
That's what I want to ask you about, because I was told that Europeans were the first colonized, and that's probably why it's the hardest to break the spell.
Americans.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you go
Well,
to
even
Europe,
over, I mean.
well, you go to Europe. There's a lot of movement down there. It's the people that hold
I think it's a mentality.
that hold the money. It's the money.
Oh, yeah,
It's all
yeah.
about money. And the thing is that even in trying to make these efforts to fight those republicas, to fight the 3 LNGs, and even see that we've had results, you know, in stopping one of the LNGs, working on stopping the other one, you know, we have to look at that even with the letters that we have sent, because we asked for due diligence from those republicas on the remains. You know, and
We should,
yeah,
we should say those republics. You referenced it a couple times, but I don't know if people watching will know that's the coal mine.
That's a coal mine,
strip
yeah.
mine.
Yeah, that's a coal mine in Eagle
Texas.
Pass.
Okay.
And they're asking for an expansion permit, and I think that they're asking for more information on it, because nobody knows where those remains are. And I was the first one to ask. I'd like to see them, because I think it's important that there be that accountability. I mean, you know, Texas Railroad Commission, we need somebody to sit in front of that door every day with a sign and tell them, hey, no more permits.
Well, see, that's where like, part of the beginning of the movement when we first started. Well, first, okay, so for me, like when Juan's talking about like the education and everything, like I remember this reporter one time. It was many like at the beginning of the movement of Standing Rock. This reporter gets up and says, you know, all of us are sitting here and we're complaining about the effects of what fossil fuel industry is doing. That we're being forced to have to make a change now. It says, and he goes, "What did you expect when you pull death out of the ground? Of course you're going to have contaminated air. Of course you're going to have contaminated, life, wildlife and environment and water. Of course, it's death on top of death, and it's going to continue to be death on top of death. And it's true when you really think about it. It's just, and it's sad to see that even though we can see that, even though we can acknowledge that, we're still going to keep doing it because the 1%, those corporations that dictate what society becomes dependent on, are not being forced to make the changes themselves.
And
for the rest of the society.
Yeah, and it threatens our relationships with those animals too, because for us, our morphology was that we had the tribe, which is the people that spoke the language, and then we had the bands and the clans were represented by animals, plants, and even sacred places. And to be able to dig up that, and like he's saying, they don't care because they don't have a connection to it. Right. They're not human beings. Corporations are not human beings. They don't have a connection to it. And those of us that can make the connection can learn to accept the fact that this is important to us and to make that association with everything that's there. And I think that's part of the education that people need to understand. And
that's why when he says, like, remembering how to be a human being, I always, I remember talking to Uncle Robert John back home, and he says, now, if you look at everything that we do, and you look at every action that you do, and you look at it with love, think about a family, a father and a mother that gives unconditional love to their children. Everything they do is for their family, for their children, is out of love. How does it affect them, or how is it going to affect them? So if we treated every decision that we make, like if we're going to make this decision, how is it going to, with love, then we're probably not going to disrespect it. We're probably not going to mistreat it. We're probably going to want to nurture it so that it can continue to not just survive, but thrive. So our next generations can have something to look forward to rather than something to dread.
And all the animals,
so,
and the wildlife,
everything. If you treat it with love, with respect, and then I think the way you treat things is going to be a lot different. Which to me is like what he says is like remembering how to be a human being, remembering how to care, how to love.
Because as human people, we're part of the biggest colonization is that we're not above the creation and we're not below it. We're just learning to live with it, and we've taken ourselves out of that equation. We put ourselves above it, thinking that we can control it, and we're not. We're actually destroying it.
Well, we're just on the hour, and I wanted to give folks here an opportunity to jump into it. And I'll get on the camera if you guys are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
If there are questions.
Remember, the camera puts on 30 pounds.
That's what's wrong. I think my camera is just tilted.
It's not big. I'm not in it all the whole way.
I wanted to ask some more about, we seem to be, Greg and I and some other folks here in town are on this climate action planning process. And it's when I think of some of the divisions y'all are talking about with EGP and all the rest, and we're here in Texas, which is, you know, heart and soul of oil country.
Yeah.
This seems like one of the few possible wedges that we can take from sort of like the city side, because we, like Greg was just saying, the mayor just made an announcement that we want to go for the most aggressive kind of carbon reductions targets, which by all logic and all sense means reducing fossil fuel consumption. And I'm hoping that that represents a venue, a way to get through. Again, the idea that protest in the streets, wherever, all the different venues down in the valley, if we can continue these kinds of pressures, I just don't know a better way. And I think that this is special because it's invited by the city, it's invited by the mayor, it's acknowledged all the way around the world. You know, whatever Trump thinks. So we have that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And it's a fresh, it's from the inside of that whole industrial complex in some ways. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that event.
I don't want to get partisan, but someone on our live feed, Tristan Hartwell, says Frankie for president. So just put that out there, you know, see if that flies.
No.
Be better
Man, he can do it. Let me just better, you know.
And your first mandate?
Yeah, but
So we're federal recognized.
any other comments from the group, or yeah?
Well, one thing I do want to add in seeing that Frankie and my dad work together is that when we talk about you know, being like learning again to be human, it's like what would we value? Like if we value life or do we value profits? And in a just transition, are we talking about, you know, what do we need for our future? Do we still do we value like this American ideal of like comfort, or just giving life? And you know, one thing in spiritual awareness or education that we're talking about becoming human again is for me is like our experience at Sundance, where you give up, you know, food and water, like those sacrifices teach you again how to value those things. When we do our harvest dance, you know, you starve yourself and you value the importance of those things, and those things aren't valued in America anymore. Like the value of profit, and the more you get, the more you want. Those are things that like are not sustainable anymore, but they are not. Well, they're not sustainable. Our future, if we like give value into like taking and subduing and controlling people, we're going to kill ourselves, or certain people are going to die, and that's where the future is very bleak. So, you know, moving forward, I have to go back to Anzal Dua. Yeah, what she said is that, you know, I change myself, I change the world. It's not like, you know, trying to control other people's minds or manipulating people with rhetoric. It's about like self-care and self-love and changing ourselves individually and valuing life over profit. So I just wanted to add that in there. Also, one thing is like when we were talking about building the villages, is, you know, we were really wanting to invite other people that are activists around the world, like celebrities that are involved in these things, to put their money into these communities that are already poisoned. Give them jobs. Give them an opportunity to heal their community through these villages. And I don't know who's watching out there who has that kind of influence or those kind of connections. This is what we're looking for, is like national solidarity on these days that we do have these actions. If you can't be involved, have, you know, awareness in your own city, your colleges, and in your churches, because this is a fight for our humanity and for our future. Like our future is at stake. I mean, we're being faced with the end of the world and the end of humanity. And there's this Swiss song that talks about what would the rock say if the rock could speak. They will say something when we're gone. They will survive. Those rocks will be there. That oil will be there. We won't have survived because we didn't live in balance. So, anyways, I'm rambling. Thank you guys for everything you do. Thank you, Greg, for inviting us and putting this all together.
I think I think a lot of what Paul was talking about, for me, it's like understanding what it means to turn a sacrifice into an offering, because you're willing to do it. You're not dreading it. It's not a sacrifice. You want to do it. You want to make these changes. You're willing to give of yourself for your family, your community, your loved ones, your children. And it's like, so that with that comes with that responsibility, right, of understanding that we all have a responsibility to do our part, right? The first rule of life that we know when we come into this world is to breathe. When you're a baby, you come into this world, you breathe. And what do you do when you breathe? You take and you give back. You take and you give back. The trees do the same thing for us, right? It's a cycle. They breathe in, they give back. We're saying we breathe in. So it's a cycle of life. It's give and take, give and take, give and take, give and take. But I think we've become this, because of the way it's me. How do I feed me? My needs is making as much money as I can so I can give all the opportunities and food and everything else that I need for my own household, rather than our family, our community. It's just me. I remember Orwell one time saying that he called this generation like an instant generation, McDonald's drive-through, because we become this generation that everything's instant. We become instantly antisocial. We pay our bills instant, get coffee instant. Everything's instant. And so we're becoming disconnected with those things. And I think, again, like as long as we can see that and start acknowledging that and creating the awareness and, getting our communities to really understand those things, I think that's where you can start to make those changes, because you're acknowledging that, and when you create that awareness in your community and other communities, and it'll help to create those environments and continue to get it to grow.
I gotta throw a shout out. The first thing I thought probably was I thought of Dan Wildcat at Haskell Indian School. One time he said, maybe he says it all the time. One time I got to hear him speak. He said, we talk about in this country, we talk a lot about our individual rights. We're always talking about our individual rights, but we're never talking about our individual responsibilities, right? And I think it's interesting also, in like when with the, and I don't know if we have time frame, I don't want to go all the way into this, but in as much as people talk about being Christians and politics and all the rest, based upon this idea of sacrifice, right? But it's someone else's sacrifice, and now it's everyone else can be lazy and go to sleep and just fight for their yeah.
Sorry, I've been like trying to get her for a while now, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I just wanted to say not only our rights and responsibilities to each other, but also to recognize the rights of Mother Earth.
Yes.
And the fact that she is a living being, and that we're with rights, right? And that they're doing that in other parts of the world, and recognizing that. And when people talk about policy, as far as how far can you go with policy if it's all rooted in the doctrine of discovery, for example, where, like what you were talking about, the colonization, it was a seed that was brought here and planted, and it, just kind of ran rampant. But how can we do things that will provide a foundation that's different and fundamentally different, and our way of thinking is different from what has happened before, so we can create the policies and the laws that are going to be appropriate for the type of change that is necessary. And that means that we have to go back to the root of where all these laws come from, and look at other models that are happening, and recognize that tribal people and native people are already governing themselves in a way that is responsible, and that is actually creating that.
Yeah.
that we don't get attention for that is another thing. And the fracking and the pipelines and all that, it brings about all this, the disappearances of women, the murdering of women, the torturing of women, you know, the sexual abuse of women and girls. And because when we're functioning under that system of capitalism and consumerism and destruction, that's part of the dehumanization, is that even the workers that come and they're working in those places are starting to do this and turning and affecting the surrounding communities or their own communities. And it just goes to show the respect or lack of respect that we have for women and creators of life, and how we need to really reflect on how we can go back to being, you know, those people or those humans that are able to give life to each other again. Because we don't really have that much time. And so even for people that don't go to the protests or that don't do these other things, you know, just to be connected to the earth, just to be able to teach your children how to live in a different way, to be able to get back to their native roots, to be able to find what the colonial system has systematically taken away from us, to be able to get to this point, our humanity, and where it's just normal, you know, to be able to do these things, and people believe they have no other choice. That's really sad when you feel like you have no other choice but to accept a job, because what that doctrine of discovery did is it took away self-determination, and that's what we have to go back to, and that's, I think, what some of the women here were referring to with the recognition of tribes and Native people as people who we are able to function and to be able to build and do all these things. That needs to be recognized, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to get back to what's necessary.
See, when she says that, it's not just that the missing and murdered women, the indigenous women, are in the north. They've been happening on the southern border since they put the border, or I hate to use the word border, but they've been happening along the border, on that line, that imaginary border line, for a long time, because of border patrols. They've taken advantage, a lot of those women. I mean, we know that one guy just killed 4 of them that we know of. And then they shot that woman in the back of the head not too long in Laredo. You know, it's happening right here. Those are indigenous women that had families and had important things to offer to society. And they're treated like...
Well, I think Aniate is also bringing in, it's important, thank you for bringing in women, Mother Earth, the water carriers.
Let me tell you why. For us,
patriarchy, the matriarchal society has been.
And for us, because it wasn't so much that we were stronger than the women. We were just the protectors of that life, you know. Because a lot of us, even after the Indian Wars of the 1860s came in, they were killing all the men, and the ones that were left over were the women. The women held the culture together. The women are the ones that have always weaved that together for us, have maintained it. I mean, some of the best stories and teachings that I ever got were from my grandma, you know. And we're talking grandma was born in the 1880s. So I think that, you know, we have to be totally aware of that presence and the symbol of Mother Earth. There's healing there. And are we going to heal with Mother Earth, or are we going to be the disease she's going to cure herself from? That's what we got to consider.
And I think she brings another good reminder. Like, I'm glad you brought the baby, because like for me, when we went out to San Francisco, I took my girls. I think it's important. Like, we're doing all this fighting for our next generation, but I think we need to find ways to include them more in what we do. And you know, one of it is trying to get youth to come out more to those events, those types of things. And I know they say, you know, you're taking them out of school. I said, you know, for me, this is just as much as important, or education for them. Because they're getting to understand why we're doing what we're doing. You know, if we say we're doing this for our next generation, then they should be included in what we're doing, and not just do things when it's convenient for ourselves, but do it when it's inconvenient for yourselves, because that's when it's probably really going to matter. And it becomes that offering, right? It's that whole thing about turning the sacrifice into an offering, because you understand it and you want to do it. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. Remind ourselves of that. Yeah.
And Grandma?
But I love the idea, because I took Donovan out a couple of times to attend some some things that he needed to attend, that I felt he needed to attend. And when we went to court, they used it against me. And it showed that they made me look like school was not important, education was not important. How I defended it, what I said, how important it was, how he learned, and all this, it didn't matter. The courts didn't see any importance in that. That is what is sad, that we are judged by those judges and by that system. But yes, I would always love to include Donovan in everything. I hadn't seen him in everything. This last market we had was the first time he has attended anything since February of 2016 was his last powwow. And then he went to this, he had the best time. But his father won't even allow him to attend anything native, even though he's with me on the third weekend. And he's afraid to attend anything. But this time I gave him an option. I said, we have an Indian market. You can stay at Giovanni, my grandson, and my son's house and play with him, or you can go with me to market. He says, I'm gonna go with you to market. I said, I don't want you to get in trouble. He said, I don't care, I'm gonna go to market. So, yes, we need to bring the children in. We need to involve them. I'm all for that. But at the same time, we're teaching them all these things. They'll stay with them, they'll remember them, but then they have to go to school the next day with his other children that have and you know, it's hard for them.
You know that you're right, because to me there's the militarization that has occurred to anybody that goes into the service. You know, that's why I have a real hard time with veterans, because when they're taking veterans back to Mexico because they fought for this country, and none of the veterans stand up for them, then they ain't got nothing to say to me. I got a problem with that. And that's basically what's going on. That's part of the healing that we have to go through. Because, you know, there's this false idea of patriotism that just doesn't exist. It's not about the flag, it's what that flag stands for Native people, what that flag stands for people that went and fought for it and are being sent back into Mexico, and their families are being left here or wherever they fought from. Puerto Ricanians, you know, and the problem that they have fought for, and then they get treated the way they're treated right now, and nobody even cares what's happening in Puerto Rico. You know, don't. That's why I say, you know, it's good when you talk about those things, but you better be aware that those people that fought with you also they're being punished. So
that's what happened for this administration.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that where, you know, you're saying about policies, you know, how it was used against you. I think that's what we need. Like, again, policies can be changed so many different, you know, at different times. And we need to continue to work on that. For myself, for my kids, the times that I've kind of used the system a little bit, you know, in my favor, because in certain ways, I'm not saying, you know, it's similar, but for me, I always say that, you know, when we're out there fighting for our people or fighting for a better future, that's part of my spirituality. It's part of my responsibility as, you know, what this society recognizes as a religion, right? So I say, because of the Religious Freedom Act, this is part. You cannot deny my kids the right to participate in these things.
Let me tell you, I was supposed to get him on the weekend. Get him Friday. On the Sunday that he was with me, the judge ordered that the father come and pick him up, even though it was my Sunday, to take him to his Christian church and then bring him back at 2 o'clock and then pick him up at 6 o'clock. Pick him up at 10, bring him back at 2, and then come back and pick him up again. He couldn't even, I said, we have our faith. We have our gatherings. We have our faith where we go. No, that didn't matter anything. The judge thought, no, the other one, because he's a Christian.
Right. So again, that's where I'm saying it has to come to a point where the community needs to continue to try to change that. You're not just changing policy, but you got to change those people's minds to understand. You want me to respect your way of life? You want me to respect your religion? Then you need to respect ours. And if I have to use the term religion so you can better understand where I'm coming from, then I'll use that. But we don't have a word for our way of life because it's just a way of life. It's just who we are. But in order for you, if that's the only way you can understand that you need to respect us, then I'll use that word. Because if you want that mutual respect, then this is what I'm asking from you. And it's going to be a constant struggle, like as it always has been. And it's going to continue to keep being, and we got to continue to keep making those changes and fighting, coming together in unity. Because like I said, in unity is where that power comes from. When we can come together, we can change the minds of those people, whether they like it or not. Because all we're asking for is respect. And enough is enough. Just respect. Bottom line, just the natural law and order of another human being. Respect. Respect each other. That's it.
I had a thought, I don't know if it can be done or at all. If there is some way that y'all, and we follow y'all as a group, go and talk to the city and see if there's any way that, you know how they're always organizing festivals for this, festivals for that. Why not organize something where we can have a series of presentations of the indigenous people, of us, of who we are, and y'all speak. We'll follow. Like I said, we'll back you up, and get it out there, because people want to hear things. Every time that somebody comes and meets with one of us at market, Juan is over there selling it up a storm, and they love to hear it. So why not have a series of these with the city putting up everything, that we get out there to involve the people, and maybe they'll reawaken to being humans again.
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that, because it's so hard to get state organizations and that to have them do things for the community without expecting something in return. And that's our biggest problem, right? It's like we want to be heard without having to for them to expect something in return from us. And all we're asking for is the simple understanding of respect, and they don't understand that. And opening up a dialogue is important if they're willing to have that openness. The thing is, you have to get those individuals that are in those positions to want to hear that, and to open their minds up to allow that opportunity to happen.
I don't know what they want to hear. Because if you tell them, well, we don't have a word for prayer, but they still say they want to open everything with prayers. They want blessings. To me, that's all colonized stuff, and it comes from that Christian mentality, the religious mentality, and everything's already created. Everything's already blessed, and the Creator already made it. For us, it's just to try and make the ambiance a little bit better by singing a song or singing a song to something that's there. I think that maybe what they need to do is learn another language besides English or Spanish, because they're both foreign to this land. I mean, I just saw in the news where they were, they fired a guy for speaking Spanish over at La Cantera.
Oh yeah.
And we're in San Antonio. This is the 21st century, and then you're going like, they're still, and still doing the kind of crap, So for me, it's like, what do they want to hear? I mean, I'm not welcome back to say any more prayers or whatever they call it as a faith here, because I don't know what the hell that means. And I'm not no spiritual leader, because I still don't know what that means. And because I'm just me. I'm just a human being, and that's really concerned about what's happening to my people. And I love my people. I love my land. I love what's happening here. I understand where the sacred sites are. They don't want to hear that, because I don't want them putting stuff on. I don't want digging stuff out like the Alamo. Why do they want to dig all that stuff out? Why do they want to move stuff? Why are they digging stuff over at the prayer garden? And see, those are things that just for me, I don't understand. And there's two things in our language. We do have a thing about life waves. It's more or less called Panayo, which means it's alive. So when you understand the language, then you have an understanding that everything in life is moving, and you have no control of it. You want to control it, and that's what urbanization is. They want to control it, but it's still moving. It doesn't matter what it is. You're still going to have the hate groups up there, and we can talk about love all we want to, but you're still going to have to deal with that healing that hate group that's out there, that's always opposing you. And you have to deal with it. You have to learn to understand it, because the brainwashing, the Stockholm syndrome that's taken over us, you know, because we're like, we believe with it. It's okay. Let's get some oil companies in here. Let's get the LNGs, and we're gonna have jobs, you know. But you know, where's it? Once the oil and the LNG is gone, what's gonna happen to the jobs? You're gonna have these eyesores out there. They're gonna be contaminating the sacred sites, contaminating the land, and they're not looking ahead. So it's a matter of looking at what's happening right now, what's happened in the past, and what's happening to get to that point. Because, you know, we just had an explosion a month and a half ago, right here in Karnes City, Karnes County. And what did anybody do anything about it? No, all that stuff, all that smoke, all that pollution came right into San Antonio. Yes, it's good to be here to talk about it, but we got to be out there in the front lines to be able to do it. And in Texas, we got some problems. We got some major problems with coal mines. 6 in the state, in the country. This state is 6 in the country in lignite coal mining. And then they're selling, because the EPA allows it to, the anthracite coal that's in Dos Republicas, to sell it to Mexico, who burns it down there, and guess where all that stuff is coming? Right to here. And who does anything about it? Nobody, because they're getting money. But the money, everything's going outside. It's an export. We're not even using it here, except for the lignite that goes into Calaveras. But you know, like you said, solar panels.
And see, that was the thing. Somebody had brought up a while back.
But you need the carbon for this. You need the coal.
Somebody brought up and said, you know what? Okay, what's the solutions, right? It was like, okay, you want to get rid of it. What's the solutions? I mean, you know, how about all those jobs? What about all those people with all those jobs? What are we going to do with that? And I told them, you know, for me personally, when I sat there thinking about it, like, well, how are you going to re-education, teach them about solar energy, biofuel, farming, you know, wind turbine, all these, you know, replace those jobs with these jobs, right? And I said, well, what problem? And we have a problem, right? I mean, if we continue down the path we have right now, we're going to run out of water. You know, there's elders that spoke of prophecies that the next world war is going to be over clean drinking water, right? And so, you know, we have a problem. And it says, for me personally, I sit here and I said, okay, what problem do you want to deal with? Do you want to deal with the problem of not having drinking water, or having to re-educate some people on a new profession so they can provide for their families? Me personally, I'd rather deal with the problem of having to re-educate people, you know, and, you know, so they can get different types of jobs rather than, you know, not having enough drinking water and going to a world war. You know what I mean? To me personally. So I think that we have to look at those things and say, okay, what's really important, you know, and how do we deal with those things? And that's how we're going to.
And as a tribe, I've been able to convince those that have in the tribe, that are tribal members, to be able to go down into the valley and build, you know, a restaurant is going to hire 100 people. So it's not like we're going down there not offering something. We're telling them, hey, look, we're bringing 100 jobs to the area. So it's not just like they're bringing jobs, but we can bring more if you continue to recognize the fact that we're here, and we can find ways to hire people to do this. I'll write grants every freaking day just so that we can hire people to take care of those sacred sites out there, instead of building those things out there. There's solutions, and the thing is, people just got to wake up a little bit and say, okay, that's what I want to do.
Call Leonardo DiCaprio, tell him to open it.
Right?
Low impact.
But I think we also have to look at their tactics too, though. I mean, look at you got Kelsey Warren, who we addressed.
I didn't identify him earlier. Kelsey Warren is the head CEO
of Energy Transfer Partners, that's responsible for DAPL and many
Sunco.
other.
Don't buy Sunco gas.
And
All
these other companies and oil pipeline companies that are putting pipes into the ground. Well, anyways, we addressed Kelsey Warren at a board meeting that was for the Parks and Wildlife. So here we are at the Parks and Wildlife, where their mission is to protect and preserve these places for our future generations. But yet you have an executive of an oil company, extraction company, sitting on that board. And what do you think he's going to, push to vote for? Of course he's going to push to vote to put these pipelines down into these lands that are supposed to be getting protected. And it's a conflict of interest. And then where does his wife work? His wife sits on, it's the
Commission for the Texas Steel.
Yeah. So it's like, here you got somebody else that now, I mean, they strategically planned out their, how they're gonna, make this happen for their company and, and profit the most that they can and get what they need to get past
And we
in
have
every
to
way
hold,
possible.
and we have to hold not just those guys. I mean, not just
All of them
the
accountable.
agency. We have to hold our own politicians accountable.
Yes.
Henry Cuellar, for one, $800,000 just for oil money, and also prison. And I don't mind saying that because I want to run against him if I had to, just to call his ass out. But the thing is, he needs to be aware that he's a sellout. And we have people right here in San Antonio that are doing the same thing, taking oil money.
And I know that there's politicians that showed up to the front lines in some of the recent actions that we've had, but I get upset when we have these large rallies, where these politicians come and say this is unacceptable, this is wrong, and this needs to change, and this is we're not gonna take it. But they're saying this in a safe environment in the middle of a city. Say those words at the front lines with the rest of the people that are on the front lines risking their lives and everything they have. Come to those front lines. Share that pain with them. Don't just say and speak about it in safe places. That's my problem. That's why it's hard for me to listen to a politician that has all this media come out when they decide to come out and speak, but yet you don't see as much media or see them coming to the front lines along with everybody else.
And walking down into the trench and standing
Exactly.
on the pipeline.
Risking everything.
Staying in the camps. Well, I want to wind it back. We're on the hour right now. I don't want to hold folks against their will or what have you. But where do folks either here in the room or probably more so online find more information about the work that your respective organizations, your tribe, are doing? And we've obviously laid out, the challenges in Texas are real. There's work happening in San Antonio. We should hold up the climate work. If there's anybody who wants to fold into that and bring Native perspectives or any way to bring the youth together too, I want to prioritize that and work with y'all on that too. So, how can folks get in touch with?
Well, this weekend we're going to have a couple of a men's workshop and a women's workshop down there at the compound.
You're talking about in
Floresville,
right? And mostly just to get everybody updated on what's going off with Carrizo Creek down in Dimmitt County.
And say again what that is real quick. Sorry.
That's where they're trying to build some more fracking wells right in the middle of the creek. And so we're trying to stop that. And then also bringing people up to date with what's going on with those Republicans in the letter that we just sent out, requesting for them to refrain from giving them a permit to the Railroad Commission. And then we're also gonna, just be ourselves. Sing some songs.
Comecrudo Tribe of Texas online.
Yeah, it's .com. It's carrizo-comecrudo.com. Yeah, and that's and .org is the other one. Yeah, .com is mostly the one that we put most of the updates right now.
Okay, or Facebook, find you on Facebook.
And Facebook, yeah, we have one on Facebook.
Okay. How about
Same for us, societynamenations.org or Society Named Nations Facebook page. We usually post everything that we're doing there. I mean, we don't, we do a lot. We've been doing things with the youth, getting youth out of the city into the wildlife and horseback riding and things like that. I mean, we just had one out in Dallas. Another one's happening this weekend with some kids, some Native kids out in the city of Dallas. And then we have language programs, but everything pretty much goes up on there or our websites.
So and Allianza was talking about becoming self-determining, self-sufficient. We have a market that we're going to have every month, trying to start on the 13th
and 14th
of October, right out here on Planet K on Broadway.
Well, it's at the South Texas Museum of Pop Culture.
I saw that. It's a couple blocks.
It's next door to Planet K.
Come and support us.
Yeah.
Because we do have an attorney that we need to pay to keep him on retainer.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. Unless there's anything else, we'll just close it out.
Thank you.
All right. The slow switch. Thank you guys for joining us out here.
Text bot. Just memorize.
Oh, text bot.